welcome you to this open panel session. Welcome to panelists and also to our attendees, the participants. The number is just growing now. So this is open panel discussion on the topic of dance and criticism in the time of Corona. And my name is Petra Dotlačilová. I am editor of website Taneční aktuality or Czech Dance News, and I will be moderating this session. So this webinar is actually the very first event of a 2-year project entitled Dance and Performing Arts Criticism in Europe, which is a collaboration between Czech Dance News, or Taneční aktuality, and Performing Arts Hub Norway, supported by the EEA grant. Apart from panel discussions as today, we also plan to organize several international seminars and workshops about dance criticism. These should take place mainly in real life, hopefully, both in Norway and in the Czech Republic. But the first one was planned already for this July. So given these still uncertain times, this will also happen digitally. The dates are between 5th and 8th of July. And we have currently published the open call for participants. So if you are interested, please have a look at it, and we will post the info in the chat just shortly. But now let me introduce the topic of today and my guests who were so very kind and accepted invitation to this discussion. So in these days, we are slowly returning to the theater. We can again experience live shows and write about them. But for over a year, this was not an option. Performing artists had to stop or shift their practices, and so did we, critics, writers who reflect them. So I think that having gone through all kinds of experiences during the past year, and also contrasting that with the current re-experience of live theater, it is now a good time to actually talk about what we have felt, what we have learned, and maybe what we can take out of this experience. And I'm happy that 5 colleagues from European countries accepted to take part in the discussion. I introduce them now in alphabetic order. So first is Josef Bartoš, a Czech dance writer and editor-in-chief of Taneční aktuality, Czech Dance News. He graduated from Duncan Center Conservatory. This is the only Czech conservatory focusing on contemporary dance. And he then got an MA in dance studies from the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, where he is now pursuing PhD studies, furthering his interest in psychological aspects of dance. He teaches dance and theater history, production and management basics, and diploma seminar at the same conservatory. Then we have our colleague from Norway, Hild Borchgrevink. She is writer, artist, editor, and currently also a PhD research candidate at the Norwegian Academy of Music. She writes on music and music theater for the daily Dagsavisen and Scenkunst.no. She holds MFA in Art and Public Spaces from Oslo National Academy of Arts and MA in Musicology, and also a BA in Creative Writing and Performative Criticism. She's an editor, or was an editor of Scenkunst.no, and project leader of contemporary music festivals, such as Nordic Music Days and Ultima. Then we have Marisa Hayes, a Franco-American arts writer, curator, and educator. She contributes to a variety of print, electronic media in French and in English, including Canadian Dance International, the Dance Magazine in the USA, Alternative Théâtrale in Belgium, and Curiosity in France. She is also editor-in-chief of dance journal Repères Cahiers de la Danse at La Briqueterie, which is a national choreographic development center in France. And she serves as board member for the International Journal of Screen Dance. And I should say that screen dance and relationship between dance and film is also her main research specialization, and which she published and presented widely. And Marisa is also co-director of Festival International de Video Dance de Bourgogne. And then we have another colleague from Norway, Anette Therese Pettersen, who is a Norwegian performing arts critic, curator, editor, writer, and also currently a PhD research candidate at the University of Agder. She has MA in theater research from the University of Oslo and writes reviews for a variety of Norwegian publishers like Morgenbladet, Scenekunst och Norsk Teater och Shakespeare och Teatertidskrift. I hope I pronounced it okay. So she has also worked as a producer within performing arts, still cooperating with choreographer Henriette Pedersen. And she's also a co-founder of Writing Shop, a project that examines the processes and politics of contemporary criticism practice. And now finally, from London, we have Sanjoy Roy, who has been writing on dance for the Guardian newspaper since 2002 and contributes to other publications in UK and internationally. He was formerly production editor at Dance Books LDT, and he is also a regular mentor of the Springback Academy, a dance writing program, which is hosted by Airwaves Europe. And he is founder editor of Springback magazine, which was just launched in 2018, or just, it's already 3 years. So yeah, hello, welcome again, everybody. I'm very pleased that you are here today with us. And I would say we just kick off with our discussion now. But before I do so, I would like to say to our audience on Zoom and on Facebook that you can write your comments and questions here in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we can relate them, during the debate. So the debate will take around like 1 hour. And in any case, if you want to share more or be more engaged, in the end, we will open the floor for everybody. Then you can also unmute yourself and talk. So, well, let me start with the first question, which is perhaps the most obvious one. So what did you find as the most striking risks when watching or reviewing dance during the pandemic year? Sanjoy, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Petra. I suppose the first thing to say is that I didn't review much dance in the past year, obviously. So there was a big gap where I used to do more reviewing, and then it disappeared. The dance that I did watch, there was a little bit outdoors that had been planned for a summer festival that went ahead, but pretty much everything else was on the screen. So I think it's an obvious thing to say, but the screen has become over the last year the main medium through which dance I and many other people accessed and watched and indeed reviewed dance, because I did do several reviews of dance that I had seen on the screen. What to say about that? I'm hoping that Marisa, who's a screen dance expert, will be able to help us out on this. I felt like kind of a beginner because you can't unsee the screen if that's what you're looking at, and so lots of aspects that I couldn't unsee in order to. It's so untransparent, the screen. It looks like a vision onto a world, but it's not. It's very highly constructed and opaque, and you have a format and a size and a depth of field and edits and focuses and all of the techniques that are consequent on the screen format become part of the viewing experience, and how to take that into account was something I guess I only felt I started to work out some of those things, not very well. They were a bit provisional. The other thing about, so it's hard to judge a piece which you're reviewing that has not been specifically designed for the screen. You can't actually discount that filter. So then the question of what you're reviewing becomes an issue, puts it in question.
Did you reflect this, like when you were writing? Like, did you address this, like in the writing, that this is like another thing somehow?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The pieces, I think the pieces that I did review, they were either adapted or made for the screen. None of them were simply direct recordings, apart from a couple of archive recordings where I had to say, well, this is an archive recording. It's we're looking at the piece for this reason. There was one archive recording that was suggested for me to review, where the recording was so bad, I just said, look, no matter how good the piece is, we can't do this. I'm not going to review this. So did that. I think the other thing about the screen, which is perhaps I was more, I wasn't expecting it to be such a big deal, is that it's not about the screen, it's about the context in which you view it, because it's a much less controlled environment. You don't know how other people will be accessing it, whether it'll be big or small, whether it'll be on their mobile, whether they're in their houses, where they are in the world, what their lighting conditions are, what else they've got scrolling down the side. It's a bit like we're all dedicatedly watching each other on Zoom here with our list, but if people are in the audience, they don't have to. They can put it in the background and make their lunch and so on. Or they may have kids around, or all sorts of variables come into play, so that there is you can't rely on representing any kind of viewing position anymore, because the access is so different. One of the things that I sort of came to think was what I called geography as history, which is simply that it doesn't matter where you are, you can access things online. What matters is time zone is what matters, not location. So I came up with this phrase, geography is history. Sounded good to me. There we are. That's a rough outline.
Anette, maybe we're also talking about various risks about or problems of concentration maybe with this. Could you maybe develop on that?
Yeah, I thank you, and I agree with Sanjoy. Some of the things that for me the lack of concentration it's a bit like, even though if you don't have kids, you have to sort of facilitate. Like when you go to a physical performance, someone has already thought of what surroundings and sort of made sure that you have what you talked about, sort of this sort of how to view this and how to experience this. And when you do it from the screen, it's up to you how to do this. You have to facilitate this. You have to find a space where you can keep focused and concentrated. And it took me such a long time to sort of discover. Only recently did I really discover ways of doing this that actually makes me pay attention enough and sort of keep this focus. And I'm just a bit surprised that it took me so long and that this was such a sort of difficult terrain, because experiencing, I think we've all been feeling that we sort of live within this, the TV, as I know Hild often calls it. That's this feeling of everything happening here. And it's also something about, I knew from before that the surroundings, that the people on stage and off stage and the rooms and how to get to the theater. And when you watch performances in a festival and, you know, traveling to a festival, all of these things play into my experience of the arts. And it's also a very big part of my texts. So it becomes really boring to write about the same thing, sort of. It's always the same. It's always the same sort of hassle. It's the same phone I keep, you know, picking up, and all of the like fidgeting. So it took me a really long time to just get into this. And I also started to realize that even though I can watch, it's been like really nice to be able to see things outside my own country, or, you know, I don't have to travel. It's also, I tend to attend festivals and theaters and artists I knew from before. So, you know, it feels a bit like I'm just attending the festivals I wanted to attend in real life. I would have attended in real life, and now I'm attending them on the screen. So there's also a risk in this sort of geography. It's available to me, but it's not on my radar somehow. So this sort of how to find, you know, how to find other festivals, other artists, other ways, other sort of contexts that I feel like I'm in the same loop too much. So you know, I think that has been one of the risks, that it's been really difficult and challenging to find something to write about so you don't reproduce the same text, and also to sort of use the opportunity to attend completely different performances and festivals and meet other people.
I have to say that we worked quite hard actually with this, like trying to broadening the radar, and created on our website, we created like a new department, like where we would like always like we're looking for like what is happening like basically everywhere in the world, and also reviewed some of those events. So I mean, then that would for me be also benefit, that we can learn so much, like we can get access to so much. Although I agree that the risks of concentration are really high, and I noticed that like I do things that I definitely wouldn't do in the theater when I was watching the shows on screen. What other risks did you encounter? Maybe Marisa?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I can jump in here and say that this year I saw a great number of people who mixed what for me are two very distinct terms, which is screen dance, choreography that's been created specifically for the screen with a specific intention and in collaboration with audiovisual tools, and then screened dance, which is of course the stage recordings or the projects that we've all been viewing via Zoom or different types of screen platforms this year. So I think on one hand, although everyone became very tired to a certain extent of watching screened dance, it was a pity to regroup screen dance into the mix, because a lot of these artists have been working pre-pandemic on questions related to the role of the camera, the eye through which we experience the choreography, which is a very different context, of course, than screening a live performance online. But I think in that sense, it also really underlined the importance of having good archives, good stage recordings, and really questioning the point of view that we choose to adapt, because we will always have to choose some point of view when we make a stage recording. There will be camera choices. And I won't say that I want stage recordings. Of course, I don't want them to replace the live experience, but I do think that they are important tools, and that this pandemic underlined that more than ever. Of course, they're important for archives, for future generations of students, dance historians, and choreographers who would like to restage work, but they're also an incredibly important point of access as a child who loved dance and who didn't grow up in a cultural capital, I didn't have the opportunity to experience a number of companies except through, well, at the time it was VHS cassettes that were available at my library. So obviously the idea of having a very high quality stage recording, perhaps working in collaboration with the choreographer and the different artistic teams to make sure that there's really a thoughtful way of filming the work is something that I think was really underscored during this pandemic. And it also underscores certain inequalities in terms of the economy in which a dance company is functioning, because obviously a large institution like here in France, the Paris Opera Ballet has a new digital platform, and they have very high quality recordings with multiple cameras and great technology. But obviously this won't be the case for a smaller contemporary dance company. So we begin to see also some of the economic disparities in terms of which companies and which institutions are favored.
Mm. Mm. Yes, and in fact, the discussion that already started about like how to film dance now really became the mainstream discussion, is like what everybody is now talking about. And I remember I contacted you some time ago, like on some like reading material also about how to view screen dance, because that's like, you know, not my specialization, but suddenly we all are, or have to be, or should be, maybe, let's say, somehow specialized, you know, how to look at it, and how to, yes, how to also appreciate what is maybe important in this
right. And
media.
I think we can't ignore these questions of technology and camera work in our writing. But the problem is that many people don't have this experience. They haven't studied film and technology. And it certainly, you know, will play a huge role in our experience of the dance. So it's very important to take that into consideration.
Mm. Yeah, so I think we are already moving like to the benefits of what this period is bringing us, actually. Like learning, like, or like going on with this discussion further, and like learning both choreographers and filmmakers, and you know, to collaborate. What other benefits do you see in this past year from your experiences?
I would like to comment on the independent companies. I think, at least in Norway, they were quicker than the National Ballet and those big institutions to actually adapt. Maybe not in terms of making screen dance on screen, but more in public space, and doing walks and being really creative in how they kind of transferred their way of working into something that worked in the pandemic context.
That's actually true for Czech Republic, right, Pepa? Josef?
Yes, actually, I think so, that the contemporary companies also went first with some recordings. I would not maybe call it a screen dance, or maybe dance on screen, or maybe Marisa might help us with the terminology. But I would like to touch the benefits. Actually, we were talking about like having the screen all the time in front of our faces. On the other hand, I realized how important it is to make it more available to the variety of people out in the world. Like, for instance, my mother, who has never come to see dance in the theater, all of a sudden she was attacked by different posts on Facebooks and Instagram that there is something happening, which I found pretty amazing, because then she kept coming back to me asking, oh, and what was this? What do you think about it? And I was like, wow, okay, that stimulated actually the interest of it. Even though I still think that the experience is quite different from what we see on the screen, because what I really missed was the living body itself, the energy, the dynamics, the movement itself, the process of the movement. And especially as I'm interested in kinesthetic empathy and in psychology in general, I saw that the impact is way different from what we see in the theater. And this actually also changes the experience we're having. So that's on the risk. And one more on the, which like came up to my mind when you were talking about the risks. I would also like turn it into a benefit, is that, yes, we have it on the screen, but on the other side, we can just postpone it to see it to other time, not exactly at that certain time. Maybe when we are tired, when we don't have enough time, we have exactly kids running around. So sometimes I realized that I was actually watching some performances in a much quieter space, or in much quieter like internal physical, mental configuration than if I would go just running to the theater because I had something ahead of that.
Yeah, actually, like these benefits are mentioned also by our participants. Some of our participants mention it when we ask them, you know, before participating, they filled this questionnaire, and among the benefits, this was appeared a lot, the possibility to like not having to rush somewhere, then like, and I also feel that okay, in 5 minutes start the show, so I just like start the computer now, and then we were also experiencing a little bit of like dangerously getting used to this. To like, oh, now I have to go like somewhere. But of course there are benefits of live show that cannot be like compete with that. Yeah, anybody else on this would like to react? Yes, Sanjoy?
Just one other benefit that comes very handy when reviewing is it's really easy to pause or rewind and go back. Oh, I just want to check what happened there. And it just makes, if you're reviewing live shows and you have your notes, I mean, the memory of what happens, the detail is just out of the window. And it's just so easy just to go, oh, just checking what happened there. Done.
Don't have to wait until next time, maybe if you have
or you write something a bit vague and think, oh, I can't remember the detail, but you can be specific. Yeah.
Yes, I have the same experience.
But
yes,
but I think I very much I really have been thinking of the last year how much I love that feeling of losing things, of not being able to wind back. But what is also strange is that I've not, as Sanjoy, I haven't reviewed much the last year, but I have reviewed one opera and one dance performance with very, very few people in the hall, like 5 people in a hall that takes 1,500 people. Just 5 critics sitting there watching this performance, and that is also really strange, because you are so happy to be in the live room again and seeing the live performance, but still it's completely a different performance because the audience is not there. So it's, and also very difficult to review, because you can't kind of it's not the same atmosphere, and it's suddenly you also have to write that into the review.
Absolutely. It is very bizarre experience. I remember being in the Swedish Opera House with 50 people, and that was very strange and sad, like happy and sad in the same time. Anette, you wanted to say something?
I also discovered sort of, how do you say, like a limitation turned into a benefit, I would say, from Springback magazine, actually, from the writers there writing about things that might not have been considered dance or, performance, which I thought was really sort of, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed reading several of the pieces of I think it's called Dance Plus, with sort of scenes from movies and from the backyard of someone, and this sort of how you frame it. So the limitation is that you have to do you have to facilitate your own watching and everything, but it also becomes a benefit that you could also say, in 5 minutes there will be a performance going on. I will just make it happen. I will either just place myself somewhere and just call it a performance, or I will find something, you know, and something about how you are also, how to say, part of what makes it into a dance performance, which I find really, yeah, really interesting and interesting to read. So these limitations turned benefits I quite liked a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I totally agree. And I just wanted to add that there's another column that's really interesting, published by Dance International, called Life Moves, that began as a result of the pandemic, written by dance artists and dance writers who are looking at movement concepts and choreography of everyday life or of non-human animals, the movement of nature. And I really appreciated this because I felt like this year dance suddenly became a little less anthropocentric, and that we really started to look at movement patterns elsewhere and try to wrap our heads around this environment that we live in and the troubles that are currently going on because of our relationship to the environment. And just one quote that I really love that I read during the pandemic by a dancer who was working at home. And she said, "Maybe we can't go out right now, but we can go in." And I think that all of us can do that during this time of the pandemic, to consider different relationships with movement and with the environment, as has been happening with some of the dance writing, or just simply looking at dance in other contexts that we normally might ignore because of the omnipresence of the stage in dance writing.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. It reminds me also Hild's, I think you mentioned some new practices that appeared in relation to, like, new performance practices and writing practices.
Yeah, I myself, or Anette and I actually started a reading group, or as a kind of a reaction to the pandemic, for a reading group for critics, as a kind of answer to what could we do when we can't go and see performances. We could read together and read. We've been reading theory, which was really, really nice. Reading it aloud around the table with 1 meter between us. But I also, what you're probably also referring to is that I'm in this application thing, reading applications for Nordic support, and there came in this an application from a choreographer who needed to change her project because of the pandemic, and originally there was a collaboration between Norway and Brazil, and they were going to travel and collaborate. Which they have now transferred into sending each other letters and sending choreographies across the earth, and just doing each other's choreography in the opposite geography, in a way. And there was also some coordination of the time they were doing it. So I just thought it was a very beautiful way of kind of making writing a medium of choreography again, and just actually sending physical letters.
Yeah, this actually brings me to, like, I wanted to talk about also, like, what these new formats that we encountered. We already mentioned some of them, but it would be also nice to share some other of these practices that strike you. Maybe you wrote about them, maybe not. You know, something that happened in your countries, or maybe not in your countries, something that you experienced that was in relation to this very strange time, something striking. Can you remember of such performance or activity?
When I was thinking about different and new formats, I remembered from Czech Republic, the Cirkla Putika did at the very beginning, like a performative act, I would call it maybe, that they had all their artists at one place, which was like recorded by camera, and you could see them live, and they were answering phones, and everyone could call them to ask them for a song, for a dance, for just to talk or anything. So I saw there like a nice connection in between, like helping each other in this pandemic time, using actually artists and what we already know, and like the connection in between the people. And that's something which I really liked.
also letters like Hild talked about this, because a Norwegian choreographer, Mette Edvardsen, has a project called Time Has Fallen Asleep in the Afternoon Sunshine, where a bunch of people, mostly dancers, but all sorts of artists and people, learn books by heart. And so you borrow a book and you have a one-on-one meeting with someone who knows a book. But in the pandemic, they have been, you could have like a letter. So you could get a sort of a meeting in the mail. So you received a physical letter of someone who sat down for the sort of the time span you would have met the person and wrote down and sent it in a letter. And I received a letter from the unpublished diary. What was really nice is that you could see sort of the process of writing, and then sort of a bit like you say, Sanjoy, instead of going back, you cross out the word and you write it again because you remember it wrong, and all of these things that happen when you are in the sort of the process of memory. So that sort of memory as a choreography has, and the letter was sort of felt very personal and still not. So it was this interesting thing. But I've also been attending several things on the phone, which has also been this one-on-one meeting. So I had one thing by a Norwegian choreographer called Ingvild Isaksen, where I received a choreography from someone on the phone, but I also had to give one. So I had to sort of make a choreography or like a position and give it. So we exchanged choreographies, and I've borrowed a body in Malaysia. So I was, for an hour via Zoom, I had a body in Malaysia. So that was also sort of something about the attention span. It's something about you feel when you're the only one listening or the only one watching, and you also have to sort of either move a camera or have a conversation with someone. You are in the same sort of concentration as when you're in a theater in the black box. So the ways of sort of experimenting with the meetings, and how the digital opens for like a lot of people to pay attention, but the fewer we are, the easier it is to actually pay attention somehow. It's easier for me to pay hard attention in a room with 1,499 others than online with the same amount of people. So
I found these Zoom performances quite interesting, like especially when there was this interactive aspect, sometimes like one-on-one, or like being in breakout rooms, and actually and they made us do things together. And I have to say that in the beginning it feels like almost like more scary than an interactive performance. But then it is much more, it is very intimate. It is very intimate experience. Have you had also these experiences, Zoom or telephone, Marisa? You have seen a lot of screen, but what new have you seen?
Actually, the new comes more in the form of some solutions that artists came up with to propose live performance, but within a very constrained situation. One I really appreciate is a Swiss company called Zonko Itinerant, which is led by someone who worked with bread and puppets. So he's someone who combines puppetry, music, and dance. And he designed a series of performances that would go from window to window. So you would have a performance come to your house and you could watch through the window to see live dance. I've also attended a number of dance walks, which seem to really proliferate this year, I think, as has already been mentioned. But in terms of Zoom creativity, I'm afraid that I didn't see much this year, especially in France, where I think there was a real reticence to engage with digital materials. Keep in mind that even our national opera has only just created an online platform, which is something that's a little behind many other countries. And I think it reflects a certain suspicion of the digital world. We've heard repeatedly, not just this year, that we have to defend live performing arts, despite a very consequential budget from the government that's dedicated to live arts, there's been a real suspicion of screen dance and other digital practices even before the pandemic. So I think that also is reflected in the projects that we've seen this year as a result of the pandemic. So it's very specific, I think, to each country and certain cultural practices, certain artistic practices, and also ideas about live arts and the economy related to them.
It's maybe not a choreography or maybe a very abstract choreography, but I attended an international conference called The Material Life of Time, which was originally going to be physically somewhere. And because that didn't work, they actually just, and it was about how we conceive time in different ways in all subjects. But since they were not able to do it physically, they kind of really did it digitally. And the conference went on 24/7 around the world in a way. So there were kind of this really complex Excel sheet where you had to sort out which time zone and where you were, and some things happening in the middle of the night for me. But in some way it was a very beautiful thing that people just sit down and make this enormous matrix of counting time and trying to connect through Zoom.
Yes, Sanjoy.
Yeah, I guess I would add that what sort of in general, sort of like demographically, everyone is becoming more used to technological mediations through force of circumstance. And I remember I went to the London Film Festival for the first time. They launched a program called Expanded, which was about virtual realities and augmented realities and interactive digital technologies. It was actually planned before the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely gave it a big boost, and it brought in a dance critic to review it, which I might not have been able to do otherwise. And talking to a couple of the choreographic artists who were involved, they hadn't been producing much work this year to present, but the number of inquiries they had about working in particular ways in relation to, 360-degree filming, augmented reality, where the post-Pokemon Go age, and virtual reality cameras and experiences was huge. They were so busy. That I think the technology has probably accelerated. The development of technology has probably been accelerated over the last year, and we will be seeing the effects of that, as of now, I guess. By the time of the next London Film Festival, I'm sure in the autumn, the ways and the experiments will have moved forward, as will people like me who was sort of like struggling with the headset and getting assistance about what do I do with this, I'll probably be sort of more au fait with it by September, certainly more than I was last September. And I guess I just wanted to pick up on one thing that Anette had said. Thank you for mentioning Springback Magazine. One of the things that I think has become evident, this is different, that's the technology question. I think there's also the lens question, which is that, as Anette said, I've actually kind of been seeing dance everywhere in worlds that are not sort of defined as such. So it's not only theater or film where I start noticing the choreography and composition of, whether it's somebody making a political speech on the news, or the movement in the frame of people in a feature film. I have to say, Marisa really helped me with that one, with some clips that she sent me. But as she says, I see it, I kind of start seeing it in movement direction, in traffic, in streets. And interestingly enough, when I was doing a writing course on dance in November, it was 6 sessions, and I don't think it was till session 5 that we kind of got round to writing about dance. You know what I mean? We started with looking at people in the streets. Then we started looking at documentary stuff that was recorded. And so things to do with movement, not really to do with dance. And I think I started feeling like actually we can bring a certain way of noticing, shall we say, to scenes, to stuff that can be valuable and interesting. And it's informed by our dance ways of experiencing and our loves within dance, but it's by no means restricted to it. It actually informs a whole lot of things. And actually that in a way was the most liberating thing for me, was to just go into, just to see it in everyday life, really.
Yeah, but actually in this way, you are not like really reviewing dance, but you are creating dance through writing, like through seeing it. Through seeing,
actually, you know, I kind of went in with that writing course, which I loved teaching, by the way. I will let you in on the secret that it was for a group of people at Siobhan Davis Studios. But because I'd never done a 6-week, 2 hours a week writing course, I enlisted Marisa as a guinea pig. So a few days before I would teach it, I would have a rehearsal session with Marisa. And that was something that happened courtesy of online Zoom. And I could rehearse the writing course with Marisa. It was great. Thank you. But one of the things they brought out to me was that an aspect of the writing that I've always tried to do, I just gave it a lot more importance than I kind of affirmed its importance, which is to do with, which is not to do with judgment or evaluation, but it's to do with noticing, with attention, with attunement, and with style, really, I guess, with written style. And those aspects, I kind of affirmed that they were really the most interesting and often the most important for me. They're not always read that way, but never mind. That's how it goes.
I just wanted to add that this reminds me so much of John Berger's famous, the arts writer and philosopher, his famous film series for the BBC, and also the book Ways of Seeing. And I think in a way, what it sounds like is that all of us have arrived at some new ways of seeing movement. Perhaps that's a new series, a new book to be written. But it's I who thank Sanjoy for the workshop experience. It was really wonderful, and it certainly opened my eyes to different ways of looking at movement during this very difficult year.
Yeah, just because I think this is, like you say, is it creating dance or is it sort of reviewing? But isn't it also something in between, like you say, the framing or the ways of seeing? It's there's I think Theron Schmidt, who writes that critical writing is a part of the cycles of the performance of making and imagining. And I think sort of this year has really brought that way of looking at critical writing into sort of new production modes, which I think has been really, really interesting.
Yes, I also feel that suddenly you have to definitely frame in another way and think. So what can you be more concrete, like in what way this thinking and writing changed?
I think it's something about like you have to make the boundaries aren't set in the same way. So it's more up to you how you where you draw the boundaries, where you sort of draw the line, and what is a part of the so-called piece, and what is it you are imagining, and does it really matter, and is it important for the writing per se, if it's a movement you see in the street, or if it's by some quite famous sort of choreographer and dancer on a sort of well-known stage. And it brings something into how you write about something, not just what happens, but also how you see it and how you write about it and how you contextualize it. And that it is possible to sort of also bring all of those previous experiences from all of these black boxes and big halls, and these are also evoked in seeing someone in the streets, and all of these things are sort of intertwined. So what I sometimes call like my memory of all of these performances that are in my body, like I remember them in my body. And it also became clear to me that when I watch something on the screen, if I don't write about it or do something about it, it disappears more quickly, because I lack sort of the effect. So if I do something, if I write or talk to someone about what I'm seeing, then it is connected somewhere. But without it, it's difficult. And when I'm in the same room as someone, my body is connected in a different way. So it's something about how you remember and how you sort of make that memory stick to some extent. And I'm not done with sort of thinking what this means and what it is, but I find this sort of maybe the most interesting coming out of this. It's changing some of my modes of and ways of writing, and you have to work harder to some extent.
It feels almost like the absence of the dance or dances that we love this past year, in a way created a space where we could take everything that we know and love about dance and apply it to everyday life, to see other ways of looking and interacting with our bodies, with each other, navigating spaces and the environment. And in a way, isn't this what so many dance artists are trying to do, to defend dance as a way of life, as an experience, not just the execution, but as a lived and shared experience? And in a way, I feel like the writing has become an extension of that by looking at these other areas where movement is concerned.
Yes, and I mean, in the same time, like for me, of course, the life experience was very limited or almost none, but there was a lot of dance going on, whether it was on street or then like as we speak about the outdoor performances. So I felt like I'm always in it, even if in another way. And I remember we had a lot of discussions about being a medium that reviews dance. What to review? Should we review this? Should we not review this? But some people were also very not willing almost to watch on screen, and in the same time, when there were things produced and put out there, then I felt like, well, we should reflect this somehow. Pippa, what was Josef? What was your thinking about this? Like how to choose, because you're editor-in-chief, so.
Yes, until now, I remember the moment I called you in last year in March and asking you, what shall we do if we are a dance magazine and there is no dance happening and the theaters are closed? And like many possibilities came out of my mind, except including also the one like stop doing it, because it doesn't have sense if there is no dance. It doesn't have sense to review it because there is no dance actually. But of course, that was like the first reaction that which evolved into, as Petra already said, into a more informative way, that we started like informing people what's going around the world, because all of a sudden there was a splash of dance performances, dance videos, and everything. But I must say there was one change which happened for me, was that I felt the urge to write about dance actually. I felt that the dance itself won't be heard if we won't do that, because the theaters are closed, and it already has, I would say maybe in the eyes of society, like inferior position to other arts. So I felt the urge to level up a bit this and to write about it. So for me, it was more the having to write about it. But in a way, I was happy because it made me realize many things. It also made me reflect on the things I actually appreciate in dance as the living body itself. And yeah, so I had this like practical question in my head what to do, but which came later to write about it as needed. So I did actually write a lot about dance.
And well, we were reflecting also all kinds of things that like Czech artists or also international artists were putting online. So what was this experience? We already like started a little bit about like differentiating between dance on screen and screen dance. I guess Marisa, you had a lot of discussions about that. Did you like? Because I always in my writing I always like try to understand like what is this actually, because we have seen a lot of like also hybrid forms recently. Like it is not a dance film, but it is not a recording that is, you know, just like on one camera or three cameras. It's somehow moving. The camera is like part of it, but it's still not a screen dance. So how to, yeah, I was like always wondering like how to reflect this, like what is this experience actually, because it's not experience that you will have in the theater later on when you see it.
It does feel a bit that the definition of screen dance had to expand or make room for new types of hybrid projects this year. I'm particularly thinking of Zoom performances where the intention was to stream a live performance via Zoom that people would experience in real time, or I don't know if we can say real time with Zoom, but the tiny delay that one gets with the transmission on Zoom. Yes, because the screen is the medium through which we receive the material, it becomes a sort of screen dance in the sense that the position of the camera or the computer, any movement in terms of what might happen if the computer moves during the performance. Here I'm talking about the webcam that might be capturing the dancers. All of those things play into, of course, our experience and our understanding of the dance, although it's not necessarily intended, say, as a film that might be shown in a cinema or a gallery space. So I think there were a number of hybrid projects as people experimented with different models of working with the screen this year, and particularly in a live format, which is not something that screen dance is typically known for. But of course, one could give a performance via Zoom or Skype and really play with the proximity of the camera, which is one of the fundamental aspects of screen dance in terms of distance, intimacy, the relationship to skin, and all the details of the body that one can find thanks to the camera. So I agree that there were definitely hybrid projects and a certain renewed interest in screens and trying to make sense of what are these different ways of working with the screen, both pre-pandemic and during, and hopefully soon post-pandemic.
Mm. Did you review some of these hybrid forms, or like I think it must have been different for you to suddenly see so many different kinds than you used from your screen dance practice?
I did, and in a sense, it felt quite natural because it was an extension of the work that I already do with Screen Dance. But in particular, for the Screen Dance Journal this year, there's a special issue that's just about to be published, I think next month, and it's all about the work that's been produced this past year during the pandemic and one's different experiences of screen. So in this issue, there are questions covered linked to teaching dance on Zoom, viewing dance in many different formats online this year, as well as what might be more traditionally known as screen dance. So we're looking at kind of all the distinctions between those forms and also some of the new forms that have emerged this year out of necessity. So you can look for that issue, the International Journal of Screen Dance. And so one of the things that I did as part of a larger collective group of screen dance researchers working together is that we created a forum of critical questions that a viewer should perhaps ask themselves when experiencing the work. So we've kind of created a little blueprint for those who might like to really reflect further on what it means to be watching or experiencing dance on screen this year.
Could you share these questions, maybe some of them with us?
Well, I think one of the fundamental questions of screen dance that I always come back to is this question of ontology, because it's really important to remember that we are not looking at bodies, we are looking at images of bodies. And that sounds really obvious, but we tend to forget it, particularly when we work in live dance and we talk a lot about how much we prefer a live body and that a screen is sort of second best, that it's something not quite as desirable or not present. I could go into that. That's another topic, because I do think that there is a presence, although it's often the presence of the camera and the body positioning behind the camera. But in any case, one of the questions that we begin with, for example, is when a body is not a body, what happens to a body watching this body that is not a body? That sounds like a trick question, but we are really asking people to start to think about what it means to look at an image of a body versus the live body on stage. So we have a number of questions like that we don't provide the answers to, by the way. What we want to do is generate discussion, because I think there are multiple answers that are possible to each question. So the intention wasn't to be so didactic as to really generate reflection about some of these issues. And other questions are very practical, linked to labor, economy, teaching, curation. Some of these are questions that existed pre-pandemic. For example, when we look on the internet, what kind of curation exists? For example, there isn't really curation on a site like YouTube, but we do have dance video sites like Numeri Danse in France that is curated. So what are some of these differences? What does that mean in terms of viewership and the experience when one is looking for a video of dance? So we have a whole variety of topics outlined in the article, kind of ranging from aesthetics to politics to the financial aspects of working online, many different things that would have touched the work of artists and spectators this year.
That sounds fascinating. I'm really looking forward to read that. I will just remind that we have gone now almost an hour of this discussion, and also remind our viewers, audience, if we can say so, to post your questions if you have some, or if you want to comment on something. Otherwise, I think I will also start to look more into the future. So we have been reviewing the past and what have we encountered, but and we also touched already the changes maybe in our practices. But what do you think this will how this affect this past experience, both the dance scene, but also how we now review it, how we look at it, how we write about it? I know, big question.
Maybe I will kick it off with one thing. I was making an interview with David Hinton, who was curating some dance films and dance movies in the Prague Dance Film Festival. And he told me actually one specific thing, which I found really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it. He told me that dance filming is very young discipline, and like the signature pieces haven't been made yet, so we have a lot to look for. And that's something which I realized that that I'm really looking forward to it.
I actually remember one Czech choreographer who like started with dance films during this year, and he said that he really found himself, Václav Kuneš, that he really started to like this medium, and it was for him always something he wanted to try, but he never had like the means to do that. But now, since it became much more also accessible, because the collaborations now being established more, that we might expect even more from this. So there is maybe more of dance films that we can look forward to. What else? How this can affect like the live performance?
Petra, one more thing actually which came up my mind right now when you were talking about Václav was that actually it also influences the government itself and the division of money, because for instance we saw that all of a sudden a certain amount of money was dedicated only to digitalizing the dance itself, which was never seen before in Czech Republic. So I think that's very interesting.
How was that? Like, I suppose it was in other countries as well. Norway, maybe. England. Have you noticed the same?
I think, I mean, at least the institutions here that are quite firmly supported, they quite quickly got this claim from everyone that you have to do something, and you can't just sit there and close down. You have to digitalize what you're doing. So then they channel a lot of resources into building platforms, and but also actually the National Ballet have been doing like going outside and not, they have been filming and digitalizing, but they've also actually been doing public space productions in front of elderly homes and traveling around with a lot of technical stuff. So.
Yeah, I get the feeling that that there's both there's a greater attention to the international reach of a work and through digital means, and simultaneously there's like the opposite focus of making your work relevant to local communities and kinds of people who you may no longer have a live audience that is of this particular kind of people who you might rely on touring through, I don't know, 5 cities of a similar European size or something. So I think there's the idea of locality, although if, as I said, geography is history online, but actually offline, it's kind of really important now about how any cultural organization lives when its physical touring and so on is restricted for good reasons sometimes. Yeah. So I think there's much more of a sense now of well, shall we say pluralizing an audience within a smaller locality, perhaps, than we used to have. Certainly in big metropolitan cities, anyway, like London, which felt very, interconnected internationally. But actually, it's also people living on the ground in neighborhoods and with different classes and cultures and subcultures. So I think there's more engagement in that, at least more awareness of that as a factor.
Yes, I guess when you have the limitation of like 1 kilometer, I know it was in France, I'm not sure how it was in England, but if you can only walk like 1 kilometer out of your house, then you can also like be very much aware what is there and also who is there, no? In this sense, like be more aware of your locality.
Yeah, and I think that might also change, or at least I think that's something that might continue, and for the big institutions, especially, maybe that might also be a good thing, so that they actually have to relate to what is 1 kilometer around them and the people that are actually there, when they normally could rely on people traveling to kind of experienced audience traveling to sit down in a seat. And also maybe I think one other thing that might continue is also that more festivals and things will be more hybrid, so they might also be like physical and digital, so that if you can't go to a dance festival, you might maybe see some of the productions online.
Yes, I think this very much contributed. I mean, like us learning about how like this digital formats kind of make it more democratic in a way that it's more accessible. I think Marisa, we were talking about it, or you were talking about it at another conference. I know there was this like idea of democratization of dance in the sense that it's more accessible. And I personally experienced it also like in other contexts, like in academic context, suddenly you can be part of things in an easier way and interact. So this is also something like maybe the hybrid formats could be something positive for the future that makes art more accessible. Can we, now I'm not sure if something froze here or not. Yeah, you are moving, so it's okay. Yeah, so just no raised hands, but I don't see any questions from the chat. I hope. Last time I was doing a Zoom webinar, I could not see the Q&As, which was very strange, and other people can see it or could see it then. So I just hope that I don't oversee something. So just please check also, like correct me if there are questions. Okay, there are no questions. So yeah, but do you think that, like, we were a little bit talking about the changing of the writing practice or viewing. So maybe more personal things. Note, how do you think you will pursue writing now? You will go back to maybe for some magazines or maybe for some newspapers, you will have to go back to the usual practice, but is there a possibility to change your way of writing, maybe viewing dance?
I'll say that both at the beginning of March, at the beginning of the lockdown last year in March, April, and at the beginning of easing in this May, I think it was, I wrote to the editor of The Guardian saying, is there any chance, please, 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 can we just get rid of the star rating system? Because I can't tell you how much I hate it. And it does for all these reasons. And I listed them, and I kind of listed them again a year later. And the answer was the same kind of polite no. So I still, I hate it more than I used to, but it's a condition of publishing there, that the star ratings will be the same. Interestingly, now that I've recently did a theatre review
of a live show.
Of a live show, yeah, mm-hmm. The first one for a long time, and yeah, I've recently been to see some live shows. And it's quite strange how familiar I went back into a mode of seeing and thinking. These were all stage shows, so that they're in a regular proscenium theatre, and 2 of the 3 were actually originally made before the pandemic, but they'd been delayed for a year. So they weren't significantly different in themselves. I think the only thing that made that I realized more than usual is that my critical position in that mode of focusing on what's happening on stage, this is the show, this is how it's composed, these are the ways that it's working, this is what's happening, this is how it's working, is more of an unusual position for anyone in the audience. I just notice it far more because suddenly the people who are members of the audience, who are non-critics, somehow they suddenly seem to be forced into more of a position that critics usually are, which is you're on your own in a seat, you're focusing on the stage, you don't have any niceties like chit-chat with your friends in the audience who you've come out for an evening out with. You haven't planned to go for dinner afterwards with your friends so the actual social experience of going to see a theatre show, which for many people is part of an outing, a social outing and a social practice with the art embedded in it. Mm-hmm. Suddenly became for many people, we have to go and we have to focus on the art because everything else has been removed. And it was just a weird feeling of having the audience members actually more isolated, alone and focused, like most critics are in the theatre, having that experience as well. I'm not really sure what to make of that. I don't think it's great for theatre audiences to have to do that, should we say.
But is it maybe also like that you are much more aware of the other spectators? Like of all the like context, because like it's something that has been like taken away from the reviewing for some time.
I think the pandemic has done that on every level of life, really, by changing what is, have this thing about what is normal and what is real. And by changing the reality, it has changed, it has exposed what is normality. And it's exposed the interconnectedness of so many aspects of life to do with economics and culture and society and geography, down to the context that you're seeing a performance in. It's actually all embedded in webs of connections. And very often previously, I would just take that as read and say, okay, all of that stuff about who goes to the theatre, why, who it's for, I can take that as read and I do this. And now you kind of see that actually you can't not see how socially embedded this practice is in wider circumstances. How much of that you can address in a review and how is a different question. And I don't know. But I think, okay, I'll stop in a minute. But one thing I think that it will do to mentality, and I noticed it in the shows that I've seen that were constructed before the pandemic. My sense was that I don't think pieces have to be political, or they don't have to be contestatory, they don't have to be protest, they don't have to be about something important. I think they can be constructed in different ways and still be relevant. They can be beautiful. But what I've developed a kind of intolerance for is for things just to be nice. I'm like, okay, now nice seems like no longer a good enough. I think things need to matter more. You want them to matter more anyway, I do, whether it's in terms of composition or aesthetics or beauty or anything, or whether it's in terms of subject matter or impact on a local event. You kind of don't want something to be, I start appreciating the consequences, shall we say, not just the performance. Maybe that's it. Ask me this question in another 6 months, and maybe I'll have a better answer, and we'll see what's happened.
Marisa, I know you have seen some live shows already. Did you also experience something else, something new? Did you write about them?
I haven't written about them yet, but I will soon for a report on what's happening in Paris. Yes, I made my first return to the theater last week. It wasn't as strange and foreign and monumental as I expected it would feel. It just felt quite natural to slip back into this habit of going to my familiar theaters. But interestingly, I started to wonder if there really will be, in at least the coming year, perhaps longer, something of a pandemic gaze or a lens through which we look at work. Because I was seeing work that for me is rather conservative. It's work that I'm very familiar with. But I realized that the 3 short pieces by the same choreographer were all about death. They all result in the death of someone in the ballet, but they are also really looking at the idea of death. And somehow this resonated quite strongly at this present point in time because of the situation that we're all experiencing, although I'm aware that this will also vary depending on your geographic location, but certainly here, there have been a huge number of deaths, and we're aware internationally of the number of deaths that have occurred this year. And I found myself wondering if this was a curatorial choice on the part of the institution's director, although I think that it's really just a coincidence in the sense that this program had been planned for quite some time. But nevertheless, one wonders now, because of what we've been going through, if this is going to be something that resonates differently when we have evenings like this that really look at the theme of death. And it was also interesting for me to see that the 3 pieces in question were all choreographed very shortly after the Second World War. So there was this kind of post-war trauma that's, simmering under the surface of the works. And of course, as we've seen throughout history in art, times of trauma, world wars, and pandemics have been huge motifs that come up again. So I'm also wondering what creations, what productions will look like in the coming years and will address this topic. So it's interesting to think about how much of that will go into the writing or not in terms of how we appreciate, how we look at the work right now.
Yes, of course. And always the aesthetic experience comes from the encounter of your individual and with the topic of the work. So it's always you cannot take one away. But Josef, I know that you have already reviewed a show live. So how was that for you? And did you experience some change in how to look at dance in theater again?
Well, I must admit that I haven't really stopped going to the theater since I spent most of the last year in Spain where the theaters were opened. So, of course, there were certain conditions, but people were really happy to go to the theaters, including me. So, coming back in Czech Republic to the theater, it was more like happiness actually to see all the people there, that we are all here, we are all with the same same way of journey. So it felt really nice. I can't really say if my way of reviewing will change. I think also as Sanjoy said, ask me in a few months and I will tell you if it changed. But definitely what I said before, that I felt the urge to write about it. At the beginning of this year, I felt kind of tired of writing because I have this feeling I have to. But now I'm being back with releasing the conditions of live performances and live events. It actually feels really nice to be back. like, yes.
Yes, I'm going to experience my first show tomorrow with Marisa, so looking forward to that in Paris. But Hild and Anette, I know that you are continuing with your reading group, also during a live festival. So that is an interesting choice. Could you speak a little bit about that, and like how do you think this will go on? Like also, will you also reflect on the live shows during that, and or not?
Actually, we made sort of the first reading group was in September when there was no performances or very few performances to see, but the intention is still to meet like physically in a room. So all the meetings we've had have been like in person, sitting in a room with 1 or 2 meters, you know, apart, and all of those, the limitations and things you have to do in the pandemic times. But it has also been the intent that we make the reading group about reading and writing as sort of a part of the critical practice. So the focus has been on the texts that we are reading, and we'll read together and then we talk about them. And then one of the critics who attended the last thing we did in the festival, she wrote a piece about the festival, about the performances, but then the reading became sort of the context of her piece. So the way she watched the performances in the festival was through sort of the texts and the reading we did together of these texts and the discussions. So that was also sort of picking up on what we've been talking about now, how we are also making some of these contexts and framing them. And I find this interesting. It's sort of a bit the same as you know, that the urgency to write, and also that I want the performance to mean something, is also, you know, I can also contribute somehow. I can also, you know, what's in it for me, and if I don't find anything, sort of what can I do with that to some extent, you know. It's also a space for criticism, is also a space for you know, what's urgent for us as critics, and
maybe more performative way of writing.
Yeah.
Yes, Hild?
I also thought it was interesting, kind of with my ex-editor hat on, because I mean, sending someone to review a festival normally gives you back a text that's kind of a list of things, which is very difficult to make really a good text, even though you both the editor and the writer try hard. But this text that came out of our reading group and the festival together is kind of, in one way, it was like forcing a context on the festival, but in the other way, it really was a dialogue there that came out as a really, really interesting text. So I'm curious about kind of exploring that format more.
So it like reflecting dance in relation to some reading practice as well.
Yeah, to some kind of non-related reading practice, but that there came some connections there that we didn't plan in a way.
Yes, I know Marisa is also part of the reading group that is happening in Czech Republic. So I have only attended one, and I was not there as well, so couldn't relate it to actual performances. But I suppose that's also the idea, right? To connect the texts with the performance, and therefore, like, you know, offer another way of looking at dance, writing about dance.
Yes, that's correct. Usually it's created in collaboration with, say, a festival event or a particular performance series. And then there are texts selected that are not necessarily dance texts, but maybe poetry or philosophy, but some theme that resonates in some way and that may form an interesting link to the performance work being viewed by the public that participates in the book discussion group.
Yeah, but this already started before the pandemic. I mean, this idea. So and this is like actually the way I feel also, like writing about dance is somehow moving towards now to somehow move beyond reviewing and going towards some other type of writing or reflecting, we can say. Yes, Sanjoy.
I guess there's the group of people who are very important, who are hard to talk about because we don't necessarily know who they are the readers. Because ultimately, writing, whatever you write, really the consequence of it depends really on who reads it and how they take it. And as with audiences for performances, they're kind of hard. They're kind of hard to know what that is, and maybe impossible. And whether, yeah, I always end up with a big question mark over my head with readers, because I always believe that actually, if you don't have readers who value what you do, then why write anything? Unless you're really motivated to write, in which case, write whatever you want. But I have to say, I find writing really hard. So if I didn't think, I think there weren't any readers, I would go, okay, it's really not worth me doing it. But the question of new forms of writing is implicated in the question of forms of reading as well. And or shall we say, it's not simply that you will find a readership by doing something new. You may narrow a readership because it's not recognized. It's kind of a dynamic that goes on in all, I don't know, in all experimentation, shall we say. All I would say is that it would be interesting to see how things develop, because we can try. It's a good opportunity to try, shall we say, experiments on new forms. If the only readers are the people who are going to be creating them as well, then that's kind of a self-enclosed system that I don't think will sustain itself, because it hasn't rooted beyond there. And I'd just be interested to, I guess, I guess see what happens. I think it's already been happening. Changing forms of reading have been happening through the internet and digital means already for quite some time now, and they change quite fast. And there's a lot of there's intense competition for attention in those arenas. Yes, I guess I'm just putting my question mark, the big question mark I always have. I'm just saying it's still a big question mark.
Yes, yes, we are all trying to kind of know our audiences, our readers, which we discuss a lot about in our magazine as well. But I mean, I see now one question here in Q&As, which I will read out loud now. Anonymous attendee is asking or saying, I was wondering if any of you have felt a degree of emptiness of having to produce text but not getting an equal amount of input, both socially and artistically. As a dancer and critic, I remember feeling the weight of the pandemic, cancellations, and having to work more to secure oneself financially as overwhelming. Yes, so I'm not sure, like maybe Sanjoy is the only one who is actual professional, like in the sense of, is that your main profession, writing, which then is maybe more pressure as well. I don't know about others.
Can I say that in my entire writing career, if you're talking about the amount that I earn through writing compared to anything else, writing has always been a bit of pocket money on the side, and I've never earned anywhere near the majority of my money through writing, and it doesn't happen as most of my time either. So I don't think that those criteria makes me the professional here.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
But I guess the emptiness of having to produce text was maybe not such a pressing issue.
I wasn't sure. Producing text, but not getting an equal amount of input socially and artistically. I wasn't quite sure what that second part was. The emptiness, there was less to do, but because I could survive from other work that I do that's not related to dance writing, I found some of the emptiness valuable. That it's a bit like you can't go out, so you can go in, that Marisa mentioned. The social and artistic input, I'm not quite sure what that's getting at. Can anyone help me out there? Yeah.
Hild?
I'm not sure if I can help you, Sanjoy, but I was just thinking, I understand the question very well, and I know many critics who had it the same way and who really struggled. And I had kind of 6 months before I started my PhD, between March and last autumn, where I worked as a freelance writer during the first part of the pandemic, which I kind of experienced the same. I had the same feeling in a way, but I also felt that because I also do some writings that are not particularly criticism. I write some, and those jobs actually became there were more of those jobs, like writing for CDs or writing a long text about a choreographer for a book. And there was something about the whole world changing focus and, as you say, going inwards and doing slower but larger things. So I had to change my way of working and write different things. But there were still jobs, at least here in Norway.
I find it difficult to sort of like the social part of it without it, just sitting there at my kitchen table and looking at something on the screen and then trying to just, start writing. I found it difficult to motivate myself, but at the same time, I'm so used to having as a part of my practice to have these texts that, you see something and then you have a deadline, quite short deadline before you have to finish it. Because for the last year, everything has been sort of like dragged out, and I just needed to have something that had a beginning and an end at some point, to just see that it's possible to write a text, to go somewhere, see something, go home. And you both have sort of the moves to move my body somewhere out of the house, not just everything in front of the screen, and to have this practice. So I'm also writing for a newspaper that has the same sort of rating system as Sanjoy talked about, and I've been able to raise the fee. I've been able to postpone the deadline, but the star system will not go away. And I just had to sort of, I don't know how to get rid of that, because I have sort of nothing else to juggle now. That's the only thing left. But there's something about having a co-audience to some extent. I think that's also part of when you talk about readers, because knowing that you have someone else in the audience also sort of makes like a possible readership to some extent. It's something about just sitting here and watching something and writing and just really feeling like published. It could have been anywhere. It could go on my blog. It could go just down the drain. I have no idea. It's something about no sense of people. I think the social part of it has been quite sort of important. So even seeing a performance with 30 other people, it's still a group. It's someone else. It's not just me. And also been watching a performance, actually attending parts of a festival in Brussels with a friend in London, and you know, on WhatsApp and everything, just to also have this feeling of watching together with someone. There's social parts, which was quite nice.
So you were sharing on WhatsApp, like what you're watching?
Yes.
Like ideas.
Ideas, and we also had like a Google document, and you know, on this tiny screen, and you know, all my gadgets. But it was also this way of sharing and being part of something, and that was, it was a bit odd, but nice, because I missed seeing or experiencing with someone. So even if when you're the critic and you go alone, there's other people, and it's something about, you know, maybe someone that would be interested in having a discussion on it, and so I write something. And when you write in small places, like I currently live in a small city, then actually the readers, they contact me. So if they disagree, they will contact me. And then someone else wrote about a piece, and they were frustrated because it was too positive. It was like, you know, full on star rating, and they disagreed. And so I've been getting messages from people like, we need someone else to say something. So if nothing else, the sort of the critic's voice has been sort of needed in that place. I don't know if that's like an answer. It was a bit muddy, but yeah.
I do find that social aspect of watching online really interesting, because to be honest, I'm not sure I've ever been so aware of what the audience thinks about a piece as I was during this past year, thanks to things like comment boxes. I personally like to really focus on the performance and not type at the same time, but it's impossible to miss these texts that come in at the side of the screen often, that have almost become a part of the performance too. It's almost as if the public is also performing on our Zoom screens when they write in with these different comments. And it's been really interesting to see them, because once again, in the theater, unless someone leaves in a huff and wants everyone to know that they don't like the piece, we usually don't really know what our neighbors are thinking of the performance. So that's been one thing that was really interesting in terms of a sort of social contact with others.
Yeah, and I think the comment boxes, you know, they're not necessarily about the piece that's being watched. They're about the interactions between the attendees online. You know, it reminds me of you know, when I was a kid, my father, who's Indian, we used to sometimes go to like cultural events for, you know, Bengali evening of art and culture, blah. But the reason for that was to meet other people in the audience. The art and culture on the stage was there to enable that to happen. In comment boxes, you get a mixture of people like you do in those arts and culture events, to be honest. Some of them want to see it for all their different reasons. Maybe it's somebody's child who's playing the flute or something. Maybe it's other people who are genuinely interested in what's in the history and the tradition. They're experts. Some of them are, you know, pleasantly surprised that they're discovering something that they didn't know about. But there's also people who are just there to meet other people in the audience, you know, and this is a great occasion to do so.
I must say, within this comments on online Facebook, as sharing as we do actually right now, I saw it with one performance as the people started talking with each other and starting asking questions, and all of a sudden the performance became like a social stimulation. And that was something really interesting and really like another level of what arts can do in this kind of digital era.
It can be so immediate as well.
Yes, immediate as well.
I would also say not just what art can do, but what people do with art, shall we say.
So I think we addressed that question in like very from different points of view. So I don't see any other questions for the moment. And actually we are going, well, we said that the event will officially take until 4 o'clock, but also before that we were saying that it would be 1.5 hours. So now we are somewhere in between. We are going towards 4 o'clock. And I would maybe encourage our spectators, if there are some left, and there are, if they have some more questions. And if not, I would thank you very much for your inputs. And maybe one more, like, well, I don't have any question, but if there was something that we haven't addressed and you really found striking during this past time and that you want to share, is there something like that that you would like to share with us? Maybe you haven't had the opportunity to write about it or tell it someone yet.
I can say that I became more interested in the process of writing, and I'm going to evangelize. Like, there's one book that I came across because I was learning when I was teaching. I was having to teach writing, so I found this book which I thought was called How to Write a Sentence, but actually it's called First You Write a Sentence, and it sounded like a really good place to start. First you write a sentence, and I tell you, it's changed my life in terms of writing practice. It's First You Write a Sentence by Joe Moran. I think I evangelized about it to Marisa sufficiently already. But really, the thing that one of the many things that I loved about this book was that it ends up talking in great detail about written style and construction and how you can do things, but it always has a sense of writing being embedded in part of a lived practice. So there's always a sense that it's a mode of connection between readers, subjects, and writers. It's never simply a disembodied text that sits there. It's actually the nexus of a web of connections between people and things, and it has effects, and it has pleasures and felicities. And I try to I think it's changed my writing anyway, or at least my thinking about my writing. And really, it's writing is a living form. There we are. And I think in a time when there's been so much about death and sickness, the idea of contributing to life is, a good and precious one to keep hold of.
Thank you for sharing. That's very interesting. I haven't.
Okay. Don't worry, I have shared this with everyone in my life, so it had to happen here.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I didn't know this one, but it's great that, I mean, we are all learning the whole time, so it's great to learn something new. Actually, we have a question now from Choi Suling that is asking about online performances, because he says that where he comes from, there is a tendency to expect online performances to be free. Has this been the case elsewhere? Well, this opens like a very big box. I'm not sure if we will be able to cover that, but I think that also became very confusing for audiences. Like suddenly so much content has become for free, and then there was also great discussion about it. Like in Czech Republic, I can say that there were Some performances were streamed on Facebook, online, or Zoom just for registration. Some theaters required a lower but still ticket fee. So anyone wants to address this, like from their point of view, countries?
I can maybe put on my curator hat, because this year I've worked with a lot of different international festivals, and it's true that it really varies in terms of local funding expectations. I've worked with some festivals where one of the conditions of their public financing was to actually charge an admission fee, even though the event was online. For the most part, what I've seen from most institutions has been a hybrid model, where some events are free and others are ticketed and charge a small fee. Obviously, the fee is adapted to the online format, so it's usually much lower than the ticket price of going to a live theater show. But again, that depends on where you live. I probably won't comment on the actual repercussions of this, because I think it opens a much bigger discussion that would probably take many hours, but it's a very important topic.
Because of course there were also like many artists who, or maybe in most cases, there was always this option to donate, even if the performances were free. Then it's obviously up to spectators what they choose to do. But how was it in Norway?
Much the same, I think. It's been lower prices. Some of the things have been for free, and I also experienced, not so much in Norway, but in other contexts, I've been sort of attending that you can donate according to sort of your income, or what sort of position you have during the pandemic. So sort of also focusing on how the pandemic has, even though to some extent it's democratic, that wherever you are, you can follow something online. People have different economical and other sort of means of attending, which I also think is a really important thing. And yeah, it's like a big discussion, but yeah.
I also know that the opera, where I've been reviewing a little bit, they started doing completely free transmissions and had a fantastic outreach, and we're kind of super glad that, wow, people are looking at us from all over the world. And then they started to ticket them. And then suddenly the number of audience just fell. So they stopped the ticketing again.
But then, of course, like art has to live as well. So that is, of course, complicated. I know also there were some raised, of course, questions about this, like audiences shouldn't get used to the fact that performance is for free, of course, because that's not how it works. Well, we will see. Anybody wants to comment on this question further?
All I'll say from London anyway, or the UK, is there was this tendency. Many of the performances were free a year ago, but it's much more common now to have ticketed performances. I think most of them were initially free, and that was a result of trying to work out what to do, because nobody thought that it would last more than 2 months, and because people got used to the online platforms and technologies that enable ticketing in this way, that a year ago most people just didn't know about it. So now it's much more common for tickets to be available and for people to understand better how that process works.
And of course, there is also like the new phenomena of cultural Netflix of different countries, and also there are some international platforms also for different art forms. I noticed for opera especially, but also for others, that there is this idea of having like a platform where you can like pay the fee and then see as much as you want. So we will see how that will work in post-pandemic world, if that will continue to go on.
I will maybe add up, as Petra already described the situation in the Czech Republic. In Spain, as the theaters were opened, it is interesting that everything I encountered online was free. There was no charge at all. so I don't know if it is actually the function of the theaters that they were still open, or if it would happen like this if they were closed. I don't know, but that's just my observation.
Yes, but now it's, I guess, our turn to like close the screens and go back to real life. Not only theaters, but also in other circumstances. So I will thank you for today. I think for me it was very inspiring. I hope for you and for our audiences it was interesting to gather here together for a while and talk. And I look forward to continue this discussion, maybe real life. And well, thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Thank you to our audiences. And I have to close now. There is no like post performance drink, unfortunately. This is also very sad when you just have to close and then it's it. But that's how it is for now. And I hope that soon we will get to get to that post performance drink as well and chat a little more. So thank you, and see you soon somewhere.